What's up, everyone? This is Darren Rose Studios, and basically today I'm going to be doing a short build log or vlog of my G&G ARP9 DSG. This is going to be a somewhat of a unique project for me, is because I'm not going to be using 8 teeth. I am going to be using a 6 or 7 teeth DSG, and here's the reason why. So, as many of you guys know, the G&G ARP9s are quite loud, and also the inner barrel is quite short. So basically, because the inner barrel is so short, there's really no point of pulling your piston all the way back here. There's really no point of doing that, because you won't be using all that extra air anyways. So that's the reason why I want to run a DSG. You can also run just a regular short-stroked SSG too. That can work, of course. It's just that, because DSGs are pretty cheap here. This is a SHS DSG. These are SHS 16:1 gears. That cost about $40 to $45 total, which is about 60 to 70 to 80% cheaper than Siege Tech. So building DSGs in Hong Kong is quite affordable. Anyways, so the build is going to be shooting 1.2 joules, mainly for trigger response, not for full auto, because this is for CQB. There are no full auto CQBs in Hong Kong, and with that in mind, Hong Kong CQB is a lot tighter than usual. So I really want the gun to be a little bit more quiet, and the DSG is the only thing that came to mind. That's the reason why I want to use that. And basically, if I have it pull the piston back only by 6 or 7 teeth, in theory, the theory is that I'm hoping that when the piston slams forward, because the travel is so short, because it's not going to be making much of an impact, I'm hoping that would silence the gun. At least that's the theory. Of course, you also have to do other work, like make sure you check your shimming, check your motor height, blah 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 blah. That you should be doing that anyways, regardless of whatever AAG build that you're doing. So that's basically the core of the idea, to pull your piston back only to use just enough air to run the gun, and have it work, and have it shoot quiet and fast in CQB. I'm really hoping that I can at least get 1.1 joules or 1.2 joules with this. This is an SHS M150 spring. Because I'm only pulling back my piston by 6 or 7 teeth, I really don't know what power I will get, especially considering that the inner barrel is so short. Oh, as an interesting side note for anyone who wants to build a G&G ARP9, the inner barrel doesn't go all the way. It only goes part way, so it goes with the... Why isn't it? If you push the hop-up unit all the way forward, the inner barrel, I don't know if you can see that, it's still pretty deep in there. So you can basically, you can buy a 140mm tight bore and still run it fine in the G&G ARP9, and you can still run a tracer unit, which is what I'll be doing. The thing is because 140mm barrels are very hard to come by, because there's not really anyone making them. Tokyo Arms, PDI, as well as a few small companies make them. But overall, there's really not many people making them. It's because even if you did buy a tight bore, actually this is one of the problems that I have not figured out yet. If you buy a tight bore for a gun this short, the FPS gain might be like marginal at best. You might not even gain any FPS, because the inner barrel is just so short. There's hardly any time for the BB to accelerate. So I really don't know how this will go. I really hope that I do not have to use an M160 or an M170 spring, because that would be a bit over. That I don't know what that would do. That would make the trigger response a little bit slower. I want the trigger response to be fast. Now, which leads me to the next interesting thing that you guys might be a little bit surprised. So for the motor, believe it or not, I actually managed to get my hands on a Tianli motor. This is the very first time that I've ever bought one of these motors. So I thought it uses a CNC cap and an end belt. It turns out it's made out of polymer, which is fine. It doesn't really matter too much to me. Like the ASG ones have a CNC end belt. It doesn't. Sure, that's fine. That's great. Dissipates heat, whatever. But doesn't really matter all that much to me. I've been using SHS motors for a long time. I've never melted one, although I have wrecked the brushes before. But that's a story for another time. Anyways, for this motor, this is their 40K motor. So you can tell you can tell that I'm actually spinning, that I'm overspinning the pinion by a little bit. It's actually not very strong, but since I'm only pulling the M150 back part way, by only about 6/7 teeth, I figured I can run a lower TPA motor. I don't need a super high torque motor if I'm only going to pull that piston back by 6/7 teeth, and it's an M150. So basically I'm not going to be pulling it back all the way anyways. So I figured I can run something like this. It still has a bit of torque, more torque than the stock G&G motor. Right, you can tell that it does snap a little bit. You can even see the armature. You can see my hand move a little bit because there is a bit of a torque to it. Magnets here are actually pretty strong, actually. I remember that there was like tons of videos of people doing weird things, like attaching weird things onto magnetizing things onto this, which I thought that was quite funny. And interestingly, it uses like a helical thingy. I'm not entirely sure what that does. I've never seen that before. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen an armature that looks like it's helical inside. I don't know what to tell you, to be quite honest with you. So this will be probably the most interesting part for me. I'm really curious as to what this will do. In case if you got eyes wide and get the 45K, because it's Christmas right now, you can actually buy these motors for like $39 US. The 45K is still $70 US, 79 I think, almost $80 US for a motor. So this is obviously a lot cheaper. So that's the reason why I decided to go for this. So I hope this will work well. Really excited to see what this will do. I have no idea what the rounds per second will be, but it doesn't really matter a whole lot to me because I'll mostly be using this for semi-auto. Because this is for a trigger response build, but also to silence the gun if I can. So right now, I have shimmed the gears. So far, that's the only thing I've done. I've also corrected angle of engagement. The screw that I'm using though is a bit too long, so I need to cut the screw a little bit. The screw that I'm using, I bought in Hong Kong. I bought like a small bag of M3 by 25 millimeter screws. That's for $5 for like a few screws. You can probably buy a whole box. I just buy these is because I don't need a whole box. A whole box comes with like 1,000 of them. I only need one. So that's the reason why I buy this. And then I also bought some of this stuff. These are just washers. These are 3/16 washers, and you can use these to correct angle of engagement. In my case, I'm only using one of these washers. The reason why is because, as you guys notice, the damper piston head has a bit of thickness to it. So this in itself corrects angle of engagement a little bit. That's the reason why I only need one. Sometimes you might need two. You might also want to consider using a sorbo pad. Sometimes people add sorbo pads and washers to correct angle of engagement. Just depends on what you like. Use whatever method that you're comfortable with. Doesn't matter a whole lot, in my opinion. Because ultimately, when it comes to this teching stuff, you have to do what you're comfortable with. Which leads me to the next part. So I will be doing some tests in front of you guys. These tests may or may not be interesting to you. Not entirely sure. So I just 5 minutes ago, or sorry, about 9 or 10 minutes ago, I modified my tablet plate so I could cut the wing. So right now this is 11.1 millimeters. I may need to make this 11 millimeters, or I may even need to make it 10.95 millimeters. I'm not 100% sure yet, is because I need to test the FPS to see if my nozzle is not returning fast enough. So I need to see. Always leave extra length, because if you cut too much, then you'll have feeding problems, right? Just leave a bit of extra length and cut it down slowly. So anyways, that's the first part I modified. Second part I modified is the guides over here. There's two little wings. This is for like the spring for the trigger trolley, but there's no trigger trolley here, so therefore I just removed it. And after I removed it, I also sanded a bit of the taper plate over here, because this area was touching the sector gear, and the sector gear was interfering with the movement of this, based on the shimming. I don't try to correct my shimming after I do it once, because I already set everything already. So here's a quick test. So I put the taper plate in. And basically, when you move your taper plate, it should move freely. Right? It should move freely. Notice the sector gear is not turning. The sector gear turns, it will do this. Right? It will move the bearing. Right, so I'm moving it, and it's not affecting the sector gear. Right? So that should be fine. Notice also that the taper plate can move by itself. So, oh, sorry. See, notice I can move all by itself. You can hear the taper plate moving. So that's perfectly fine. Sometimes people like to install the screws on your gearbox to test all this. You can do that if you want. I'm a bit lazy, so I'm not going to do that. At least not right now. Oh, I might do that later. I'm not entirely sure yet. We'll see. So that's for the taper plate. So the modification to the taper plate appears to be fine. I hope this taper plate will last. Should be okay. The main tricky part here is that when I get my MOSFET, I'm not buying a Titan. I'm not using a Titan this time. I'm actually going to be using another MOSFET. I will tell you that in the second vlog because of this build. Is because I'm still figuring out some stuff at the moment. But basically, I will need to shorten the trigger stroke, because when I shorten it, I need to add solder in this area right here. Can you see this gap? I need to add solder right there, and maybe add a pad at the back over here to limit the travel of the trigger. So that's going to need some work. Normally I take about 2 hours to do a trigger job, and the reason why I take so long is because so sometimes when you use solder and super glue to do your trigger job, if you do it wrong and you mess up, you have to redo it again. So for me, whenever I do trigger jobs, it normally takes me an hour or two to get it right, because I have to wait for the glue to cure. I have to make sure that the solder has time to cool down so I don't affect it when I use my soldering iron. So the trigger job will be the most complicated part. That will be very time consuming, because since I'm not using a gate titan this time, the trigger job will take a lot longer. I might even need to spend 2.5 hours doing it. So that will not be fun. But since this is a trigger response build, I'm just going to shorten the trigger stroke by a little bit, not by too much, just by a little bit, because it will make the gun feel a little bit better. But hopefully that works. By the way, this trigger, in case if you guys are wondering, this is the really cheap Army rebrands, or the PP Airsoft rebrand of the China triggers. You can notice the quality is actually quite crap. You can actually sort of see the CNC marks. You can see that let me see if I can show you on camera. Right, can you see the edges? You can see all the CNC marks and everything. Right, is not as clean as the speed trigger. The speed trigger that you can is way nicer, but I'm just using this because it's blue. I wanted a blue because I have a battleship gray ARP9. I thought the blue trigger will match quite well. I'm into weird stuff. So yeah, that's for the trigger. The next thing I would do is the compression parts. I already sort of, it's very minor. These are just the stemma parts. These cost 250 Hong Kong dollars. It comes with the damper piston head, damper cylinder head, nozzle, and cylinder, which is quite a great deal for these air compression parts. I'm mostly buying these because they're cheap, not because they're good. They're just cheap. After you buy them, by the way, you need to rework the air seal because the air seal still needs a bit of work. So you have to take off the O-ring for your cylinder head, take off the O-ring for your Sistema nozzle, and rework the air seal. That takes not very long, but you may want to work on that. I want to use a double O-ring cylinder, a double O-ring nozzle. Max model actually makes a double O-ring nozzle that I really want to get, because I'm probably going to be using their Max model hop-up unit in this. Because they have their new ME Pro, which I have, and I might be playing around with that. We will see how that goes. I haven't even assembled the gun yet, as you guys can tell, so I will figure that out as I go. But for now, I guess this is it for the first part of the vlog. I hope these kinds of vlogs are not too boring. It's mostly just me talking about parts, because I know some of you guys are somewhat curious as to how I build AEGs. I'm going to be quite honest with you, I just assemble them very carefully. I'm not really, like, good at building them. I just try to keep it simple. For example, later on, if I do ever get the gate tightened for my next generation SCAR, I won't be doing anything too special. I'll just be... I'll mostly be using the Titan just to get rid of the gearbox lockup. Because the next generation gearboxes, they still use a traditional trigger trolley, which can get stuck. Which can lock up your gun. But that's a story for another time. If I work on the SCAR, maybe I'll make a vlog for that, but we'll see. Ooh, crap, I keep hitting this, that's not good. Sorry, this is brass. Anyways, that's it for the video for now. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Peace. I'll actually see you guys maybe in about a week, because I'm actually about to fly out to Seoul. It's a morning 5 o'clock flight. Ugh. Anyways, yeah, bye.